Welcome back, everybody. Kicking off another deep dive, and this time we are digging into Axcelis Technologies' latest earnings call, and let me tell you, things got interesting.
Always interesting to peek behind the curtain of a company like Axcelis. They make the equipment that makes semiconductors, those tiny but mighty chips that are basically in everything these days.
Right, and by looking at how they're doing, we get a glimpse into the health of the whole tech sector.
Exactly. It's like a canary in the coal mine. But in this case, the canary is singing a pretty optimistic tune.
So true. Axcelis just had their Q2 2024 earnings call, and the big takeaway, they absolutely crushed it, blew past their own expectations for both revenue and earnings.
Which is even more impressive, right? Because the overall semiconductor industry has been kind of in a slump lately.
Yeah, that's what's got me curious. Is like everybody else is hitting the brakes, but Axcelis is flooring it. Something must be going right.
Well, it seems they've got their fingers on the pulse of some seriously hot trends, riding those waves instead of getting caught in the doldrums.
Okay, I'm hooked. Lay it on me. What's their secret sauce?
One word. Silicon carbide.
Silicon carbide, SINC. I've heard the buzz.
It's the material right now, especially for power efficiency. Think electric vehicles, renewable energy, anything that needs to handle juice without losing a drop.
Makes sense. Those industries are only getting bigger, and they need the tech to back it up.
Exactly, and Axcelis is right there with the tools to make those chips happen.
They actually even mentioned during the call that they're seeing SyncSing popping up in another area, data centers.
Now, that is huge. Think about it. Those places are power hungry. Especially with the explosion of AI, they need all the efficient juice they can get.
So if SISIC becomes the standard for data centers,
Cha-chinking. That's a massive market opening up right there for Axcelis' equipment.
they're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And to sweeten the deal even more, they hinted at a new sympathy product specifically designed for those AI-powered data centers.
Now that's what I call striking while the iron's hot. But hold on, if we're talking SISIC, what about the other big player in the power semiconductor world, silicon IGBTs?
Good catch. Yeah, they did mention that demand there hasn't been quite as strong compared to CSIC.
So maybe not as much of a rock star.
Not yet, at least. But they still see long-term potential in both technologies. It's all about staying agile and adapting to the market. Which brings us to another interesting tidbit from the call. The memory chip situation.
Oh yeah, that's the one that made me do a double take. Zero revenue from memory chips last quarter. Zero.
Yeah, on the surface, not great, right? But the memory market is a fickle beast.
You're telling me it's like trying to predict the weather 6 months out.
Notoriously cyclical. See, right now, there's an oversupply of memory chips floating around.
So too much of a good thing.
In a way, drives prices down, makes manufacturers hesitant to invest in new equipment, which is where Axcelis comes in. Or doesn't, in this case.
Got it. But if they're not making bank on memory chips right now, why so optimistic about the future? That doesn't add up.
Because they're already seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. They mentioned early signs of a memory market recovery, especially for DRAM. Remember that one?
DRAM. DRAM rings a bell. Remind me why that's significant again.
It's a specific type of memory chip, and the key here is it's the kind that really shines when it comes to AI. All those complex algorithms need a ton of high bandwidth memory, and DRAM delivers.
Ah, right. So Axcelis is basically betting on the AI boom to boost the memory market.
Smart money's on it. They're actually so confident about this DRAM resurgence, they've started pre-building inventory in anticipation.
Wow, talk about putting your money where your mouth is. That's a bold move.
Definitely a sign that they believe this upswing is coming, and soon. They mentioned late 2024, maybe bleeding into 2025.
So DRAM's the golden child. What about, wasn't there another kind of memory chip?
NAND. Yeah, that one's lagging behind a bit. They still see a recovery there, but more likely on a 2025 timeline.
Playing the long game, I like it. Okay, so we've got 60 booming memory chips playing catch-up, but it sounds like there were even more intriguing tidbits tucked away in this earnings call, things that might not make the headlines but are still super relevant.
Absolutely. This earnings call was like a treasure trove of clues about where the tech world is headed. We were just talking about the memory market rebound, especially for DRAM, right?
Yeah, fueled by that insatiable demand for high bandwidth memory, AI just can't get enough. And then a little further out, that NAND resurgence.
Right, so let's game this out. What happens if Axcelis is right? If those predictions pan out? What could that mean for, well, you and me, everyday users?
Okay, now that's the good stuff. Connect the dots for us.
Well, think about it. A healthy memory market, that usually means more competition, right? And when companies have to compete, we win. faster innovation, maybe even lower prices on things we use every day. Smartphones, laptops, heck, even gaming consoles could feel the effects.
Music to my ears. But it's not just about having enough chips, is it? It's got to be the right chips, and it sounds like Axcelis is betting heavily on DRAM for a reason.
They definitely seem to have a knack for spotting those future needs. And speaking of needs, we can't forget about those power semiconductors, that whole sick and see wave they're riding. Electric vehicles, if that demand keeps skyrocketing like everyone's predicting, game changer.
Right, because more demand, that means more production, which could finally make electric vehicles more affordable for the average person. It's like a domino effect with the potential to change everything.
And don't forget, it's bigger than just cars. We talked about Sensi being essential for renewables too, solar inverters, all that. So a booming Sensi market, that could seriously accelerate the shift to a greener energy grid.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, these tiny little chips driving such massive global changes. But okay, enough about the future. Let's zoom back in for a second on something else Axcelis mentioned, that whole middle-of-line expansion.
Ah, yes. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, a little peek under the hood. Remember that skyscraper analogy we were using earlier? Well, the middle of line, that's where you're connecting all those floors, making sure everything talks to each other. And as chips get more complex, that step becomes even more crucial.
And if Axcelis is seeing that demand for their tools increase in that area, does that mean we should expect chips to get even more powerful, even more intricate in the near future?
That's the implication. We could be talking about a whole new era of chip technology with impacts on, well, pretty much everything, healthcare, robotics, that AI we keep mentioning.
But
The possibilities are huge.
okay, now I'm really getting excited, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we dive headfirst into the future, what about Axcelis's move into the Japanese market? They briefly touched on that, didn't they?
They did, and that's a savvy move if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
Japan, they've got this long history with semiconductors, tons of expertise, and they've been quietly rebuilding that dominance in recent years.
So Axcelis is basically tapping into a powerhouse of innovation and manufacturing prowess.
Clever. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just one specific area either. They mentioned finding success in Japan across the board, power semiconductors, memory, logic chips. Seems like Japan is serious about reclaiming its spot as a major player in the global semiconductor scene.
It's amazing to me how much we can glean from just one company's earnings call. But this wouldn't be a true deep dive if we didn't leave you with at least one final thought-provoking question to ponder, right?
Absolutely. And this time, I want to flip the script a bit. We've talked a lot about how these big industry trends could impact Axcelis, but what if we look at it the other way around? What if, instead of asking what these trends mean for Axcelis, we ask what Axcelis's potential success could mean for the industry, and ultimately for all of us?
Ooh, okay, now you're really making me think. So let's play this out. Say Axcelis is right on the money. The memory market bounces back. They ride that power semiconductor wave all the way to the bank. They totally conquered Japan and that whole middle of line thing. What happens next?
Well, for starters, we could see those exciting technologies we keep talking about roll out way faster. Think about it. More affordable, smartphones and laptops, electric vehicles becoming the norm, not the exception, huge breakthroughs in AI and robotics. It's like all those what-ifs become whens.
Sign me up. That's the future I want to live in. But gotta play devil's advocate here for a sec. Faster innovation is great, but everything comes with a price tag, right? What are the potential downsides here?
Oh, for sure. Got to think it through from all angles. Like, let's say the memory market does rebound, but what if it ends up dominated by just a handful of big players? That could actually stifle competition and innovation down the road, which would be a real shame.
Right, because it's not just about having the tech, it's about who has access to it, who controls it, all of that. Okay, good point. What else?
Well, take something like electric vehicles. Yeah. We want them to be everywhere, right? Better for the planet, all that. But if they're still too expensive, only the wealthy can afford to ditch fossil fuels. And that doesn't really solve the problem, does it?
Definitely not. The last thing we need is a two-tiered system where sustainability is a luxury. Okay, so accessibility is huge. Anything else we should be keeping an eye on?
Well, on a slightly more philosophical note,
Yeah.
all this talk about AI, more powerful chips, pushing those boundaries even further, we have to be careful with that kind of power, right?
You're right, it's like that old saying, with great power. We can't let all this progress come at the cost of our humanity.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, pushing the limits of what's technologically possible, while never losing sight of the ethical implications.
It's a lot to unpack, that's for sure. But that's why we love doing these deep dives, digging into these complex issues, trying to make sense of it all, and hopefully giving you, the listener, some food for thought along the way.
Because at the end of the day, as complex as the semiconductor industry might seem, it really does impact all of us, the technologies we use, the products we buy, even the future of our planet. It all traces back to those tiny little chips.
So true. So next time you pick up your phone or get in your car, even open your fridge, think about the chips. They're everywhere, they're only getting more powerful, and the future is being built on them one layer at a time.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that just about wraps up our deep dive into Axcelis Technologies and the wild world of semiconductors. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those questions coming.